Kemi Badenoch.
Mr. Speaker, the end of the answer was different from the beginning of the answer. What on earth is the point of us having a lawyer rather than a leader as a Prime Minister if he can't even get the law right on a matter of national security?
Right, gather round, grab a cuppa and prepare yourself for the most polite political roasting you've ever seen in the House of Commons. I mean, if British politics were a sport, this would be Wimbledon finals, tea was spilt, eyebrows were raised, and someone probably needed a biscuit and a blanket afterwards. Today, we witnessed something truly rare. A parliamentary takedown so sharp, so surgical, it probably needs its own warning label. And the star of this democratic drama, none other than Kemi Badenoch, Member of Parliament, who decided she'd had quite enough of diplomatic dancing around and went full courtroom drama, Perry Mason style, minus the American accent, and with far more parliamentary etiquette. Before we show you the video footage, I'd like to ask you a small favour. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now back to the video.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for marking 4 years since the terrible murder of Sir David Amess. I know that the whole House will want to join me in remembering our former colleague. He is very much still in our hearts and minds. The way he died reminds us that the security of members and this Parliament is paramount. So it concerns us all that the case against two people spying on members of this House has collapsed. It is simply unbelievable. Exactly as I expected, the Prime Minister had to be dragged out at the top of PM queues to give a statement that answers no questions. I don't know what they're laughing. I don't know what they're laughing at. We are talking about the security of this Parliament. He had to be dragged out to repeat only more obfuscation. It is simply unbelievable. It is simply unbelievable that he is trying to say the last government did not classify China as a threat. So I will refresh his memory. In 2021, the previous government's integrated review described China as the biggest state-based threat to the UK's economic security. In 2024, the Minister for Security said from that dispatch box that China poses a threat. But let's leave aside the government. In 2022, the Director General of MI5 in November classified China as a threat in his remarks. How is it possible that the government failed to provide the evidence that the CPS needed to prosecute?
The substantive evidence was provided in 2023 by the previous government. That is when the witness statement was submitted. I am going to disclose it. They will all be able to read it. The substantive evidence was written and disclosed and submitted in 2023 under the last government. I noticed she didn't indicate whether ministers were involved in that at the time. Mr. Speaker, she questions what's in the review, the refreshed review in 2021 and 2023. Let me be clear. The then Foreign Secretary, sitting I think over here, the Honourable Member for Braintree, 1 month after the arrest, so absolutely the relevant time, gave a speech at Mansion House. It was called Our Position on China, setting out the government's policy. He said in that speech, summing up China as a threat in one word would be, his words, impossible, impractical, and most importantly, unwise. Foreign Secretary, Mr. Speaker, it wasn't just him. Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition was Business Secretary at the time. In September 23, the Leader of the Opposition said, her words, September 23, the relevant year, her words, we should certainly not be describing China as a foe. It's worth looking up the word foe in the dictionary, Mr. Speaker. She went, Mr. Speaker, it doesn't end there, Mr. Speaker. In September 2024, the Leader of the Opposition said this, I quote, I have shied away from calling China a threat. She is playing politics with national security.
The Prime Minister can read the beginning of a quote. Let me finish that quote. At the end of that quote that he just read out, I did describe China as a threat. But this whataboutery that he is doing neglects the fact that those spies were charged under a Conservative government. They were let off under Labour. He has not answered any questions. On Monday, Mr. Speaker, on Monday, the Security Minister repeatedly told the House that ministers did not take decisions, that it was the Deputy National Security Advisor who had full freedom. Is the government seriously saying that only one man, the Deputy National Security Advisor, had anything to do with this failure? Is he seriously saying that the Deputy did not discuss with the National Security Advisor, did not discuss with the Home Secretary or with anyone in Downing Street? Is the Prime Minister seriously saying that?
Yes. Mr. Speaker, let me explain why. Firstly, the case was charged under the last government according to the evidence submitted under the last government, which set out their policy decision. What was an issue in the trial is not the position of the current government, the position of the last government. And they carefully avoided describing China as an enemy because that was their policy at the time. Mr. Speaker, so far as the position under this government is concerned, no minister or special advisor was involved, and I will double-check this because I've had it. I will double-check this. So, Mr. Speaker, this is important. After the charging decision, the prosecution were very careful about who would then see the witness evidence. I will double-check, Mr. Speaker, exactly what instruction was taken. But I can be absolutely clear: no minister was involved. No special advisor was involved in this, and I'm assured as I can be that the prosecution was saying that it would be the witnesses only that were involved in short updates, the evidence that was submitted under the last government.
That's not good enough. Kemi Badenoch.
Mr. Speaker, the end of the answer was different from the beginning of the answer. What on earth is the point of us having a lawyer rather than a leader as a Prime Minister if he can't even get the law right on a matter of national security? He keeps going to the CPS. The CPS have said that they are satisfied that they were right to charge in August 2024. The Sunday Times reported that Jonathan Powell, the Prime Minister's national security advisor, convened a secret meeting to discuss the security consequences of the China spy trial. Did the meeting happen, or is the Sunday Times making it up?
Mr. Speaker, she's clearly not a lawyer or a leader. Mr. Speaker. The problem for her is I do actually understand the law. I know what's got to be proven. I've also looked at the evidence. That was put in under the last government in relation to this case. There was a meeting in September. That did not involve the National Security Advisor discussing the evidence in any way, nor, Mr. Speaker, one further piece of evidence. The final statement in this case was submitted in August 2025. There was no further submission of evidence, one way or the other, after any discussion in September. This is a red herring, a completely scurrilous allegation made by the Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has now twice directly contradicted the words of his Security Minister. They cannot both be right. The chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee couldn't get any answers from the Security Minister. The CPS said that they were satisfied that the decision to charge the case in April 2024, not August, in April 2024, was correct on the basis of where the law stood at that time. This is a matter of fact. It is not a matter of what the previous government had thought. It is not a matter of it not meeting a legal test. It did. Something must have changed when the charges were brought and when the case collapsed. The charges were brought under us. The case collapsed under them. Can the Prime Minister tell us what changed and what collapsed the case.
Mr. Speaker, I've said I will publish the witness statements in full. The whole House will then see exactly what was set out in 2023 in the substantive witness statement and exactly what was set out in the 2 supplementary witness statements, and she will then realise what she's just said is entirely baseless.
Kemi Badenoch.
Mr. Speaker, the CPS has said in the clearest terms that this prosecution was dropped because this government did not provide the statement they expected. Why should we believe a man who at the last Prime Minister's questions said he had full confidence in the best friend of a convicted paedophile? Forgive us if we don't trust a word he says. This all stinks of a cover-up. Given his statement earlier, will the Prime Minister publish today not just the government witness statements, but also the meeting minutes and all of the correspondence that he had with the CPS?
Mr. Speaker, let me be clear. The only process I want to go through is in relation to some of the individuals in the statements to make sure they know it's coming out. I can assure the House there's no substantive delay here. I know it is of concern to a number of people, acute of concern to them. I will have the statements out in full. There is a bit of proper process I need to go through. The honourable member will understand why that's necessary. Then they'll be published in full. She asks about minutes, etc. There is a usual rules and process for government. But I remind her that the substantive issues in this case were discussed at meetings under the previous government. So they're asking me to disclose the discussions that they had in relation to the witness statement in the first place.
Kemi Badenoch.
Mr. Speaker, you deserve better, and this House deserves better than the evasive answers that we have had from the Prime Minister. Even the former Cabinet Secretary, Lord Butler, has accused the government of being economical with the truth on this issue. The Prime Minister can't tell us why Jonathan Powell had a secret meeting which the Security Minister said he had no involvement in the case. He can't tell us why his government did not provide evidence that China was a threat. I suspect those statements won't prove it either. He's blaming his civil servants. He's blaming the media. He's blaming the last government. He cannot explain why he could not see this case through. He should have seen this case through. And let me be clear, Mr. Speaker, about what has happened. A serious case involving national security has collapsed because this government is too weak to stand up to China. And if the Prime Minister cannot protect the members of this House, what does that say about his ability to protect this country?
Now you'd think Prime Minister's questions, or PMQS for the seasoned political gossip enthusiasts, would be a straightforward session of, "What are you doing about this?" followed by, "We're doing everything we can, look at this graph." But no. This time the air was thick with accusations, contradictions and a masterclass in strategic memory refreshing. It all kicked off with a respectful nod to the late Sir David Amels. A reminder of the serious tone that sometimes underpins these sessions, but it didn't take long before the gloves were off, metaphorically speaking, of course. This is Westminster, not WWE. Kemi Badenoch began, as one should, with gravity, pointing out the very serious matter of collapsed spy charges. You know, just a casual case of alleged espionage at the heart of British democracy. No big deal, right? Wrong. She essentially told the PM in the most parliamentary way possible, "Excuse me, sir, why have you brought a fog machine to a fire alarm?" Because let's face it, the answers coming from that dispatch box were, shall we say, a touch evasive. Badenoch asked why the evidence to prosecute wasn't strong enough when the security services, CPS and even MI5 had, at various points, pointed to China as a clear and present threat. And then came the memory jogging segment. Kemi took us all back to 2021, simpler times when banana bread was still trending, and apparently the UK government had already identified China as the biggest state-based threat to economic security. That wasn't a bedtime story, that was the integrated review talking. So the PM's attempts to suggest that maybe possibly the previous government didn't really say that, well, that wasn't flying today. Kemi whipped out receipts, actual metaphorical receipts, MI5 statements, ministerial quotes, security briefings. If the Commons had a projector, she'd have had a PowerPoint presentation with transitions and everything. But it wasn't just a gentle nudge of, you might have forgotten. No, this was more like, you did say it, we wrote it down, laminated it, and now we're going to read it back to you in front of the entire nation. Because in 2022, the Director General of MI5 himself basically rang the alarm bell on China. That's not small talk over sandwiches. That's official threat classification. But despite all this, somehow evidence didn't make it into the courtroom. Suspicious? Oh, you bet. Then came a plot twist worthy of a Netflix binge. Apparently the substantive witness statement, the golden ticket of this whole case, was actually submitted in 2023 under the last government. Yes, the one before this one. Are you keeping up? Because at this point, the Commons probably needed a whiteboard just to map the timeline. And yet somehow, somewhere between then and now, the whole case crumbled. And rather than addressing that, the Prime Minister, according to Badenoch, was essentially playing a game of national security dodgeball. It wasn't me, he seemed to say, pointing at the Deputy National Security Advisor, who allegedly had full autonomy and made all the big decisions. Now, I don't know about you, but the idea that one bloke in a very serious suit is apparently making all the espionage-related calls solo, that doesn't sound like robust checks and balances. That sounds like the plot of a spy comedy. Kemi wasn't having it. She wanted names. Did the deputy really not speak to the Home Secretary? Not a whisper to number 10? And not even a little, by the way, China might be spying on MP's text message. And yet the PM stuck to his line, which boiled down to, I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure it was just him. That's a lot of faith in one man. I hope he at least gets a Christmas bonus, but the pièce de résistance came when the PM tried to draw a neat line between the last government and this one, as if somehow there was a magic transition where all decisions before were someone else's responsibility. And everything now is pure as the driven snow. But Badenoch wasn't going to let that pass, like a dodgy casserole at a bring and share lunch. She pointed out, again with references, that the Prime Minister himself was in the loop during the timeline in question. He was not some distant observer on a spiritual retreat. He was involved. And then the bombshell. A secret meeting. Yes, according to reports, Jonathan Powell, the National Security Advisor, had a little get-together to discuss the fallout of the spy trial, and suddenly everyone in the room leaned forward just a touch. The PM says it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't even a meeting about evidence, just a harmless chat. But Kemi wanted to know, was the Sunday Times just making it up, or is the government keeping things closer to the chest than necessary? Things were getting heated now. The Prime Minister fired back with a jab of his own. She's not a lawyer or a leader. Which, to be fair, might have earned a few gasps and perhaps a ooh or two from the backbenches. But Kemi wasn't flustered. She pressed on like a detective who's one question away from cracking the case. If the case was solid in April, when charges were brought, and it collapsed later under the current government's watch, then what changed? That's not a riddle. That's basic cause and effect. Now, to the Prime Minister's credit, he promised transparency. He'd publish the witness statements. Soon. Eventually. Probably after going through the proper channels and asking everyone nicely if it's okay. And Kemi, not unreasonably, said that's not quite good enough. If there's nothing to hide, why delay? Why not also release the meeting minutes, the email chains, the text messages, maybe even the carrier pigeon transcripts? But perhaps the most searing moment was when Badenoch reminded the House that trust isn't just about what's said. It's about who's saying it. And the Prime Minister, according to her, had previously expressed confidence in someone closely associated with a very troubling scandal. It wasn't just about this spy case. It was about trust, transparency, and whether the government is capable of standing up to a major global power, in this case, China, when the stakes are high. And let's not forget the final zinger. If the Prime Minister cannot protect the members of this House, Kemi said, what does that say about his ability to protect this country? Ouch. That one landed like a rogue cricket ball at a garden party. The room fell into that strange hush where everyone pretends to be polite but is mentally replaying that moment on loop with dramatic music. So there you have it. A parliamentary session that had more twists than a season of Line of Duty and enough passive aggression to make a British family Christmas dinner look like a holiday brochure. Kemi Badenoch took the floor, brought her notes, brought her facts and brought the drama. Whether you're a political junkie or just here for the spectacle, one thing is clear, PMQS isn't just for policy. It's performance art at its finest. No slander, no shouting, just the most British grilling you've ever seen. Now, if only someone had brought popcorn.